Well, everyone, Jesus sure has them squabbling now. He says something that really, when you think about it, is almost in the realm of outlandish. Unless you eat my body and drink my blood, you will not live. People, how many of you have ever gone up to someone and told them, you eat my body, you drink my blood? Never. Nobody has ever made this statement. Buddha never did. Muhammad had a great revelation. He shared that with the people, but no one has made this statement, but Jesus does. Unless you eat, unless you drink, you have no life in you. Now you can jump ahead, everyone, to John chapter 14. This is John 6. John 14, Jesus says, I am the way and the truth and the life. You sit down and read John chapter 6, and you'll notice how many times you see these three words: life, living, and live. It's all over. And how many of us would ever go up to someone and say, you know something? Follow me because I am the life. I wouldn't even think about it. I wouldn't think about it. I mentioned at a funeral not long ago, I would say this: I'm alive. It's like all of us are. Billions upon billions. But here's the way it sounds. I am a life, journeying to the life, who is the source of life. And that is Jesus Christ. And on that journey of life, Jesus says, eat my body, drink my blood. Because if you do not, you will not have life. Now I'm going to come back next week, everyone, and we're going to see, they're squabbling today, but next week we're going to see what the disciples of Jesus decide to do. Okay, but you have to wait till next week. Okay, as I did last week, everyone, I want to go now to part 2 of my homily, everyone, on the Mass. And I just decided, like I said last week, with the Bread of Life discourse, I don't think I've ever said, maybe nobody's ever sat down with you and explained what we do at Mass and why we do what we do. Okay, last week we took the part called the introductory rites from the opening hymn to the opening prayer. Okay, this week then, let's move on to the part we're in right now. Let's look, everyone, at the liturgy of the Word from the first reading to our general intercessions. Okay, first part during the introductory rites, the greeting, the posture you had was to stand. But now notice what you're doing and what you do for the first reading. You sit. Why? Well, the postures we have at Mass are 3. Kneeling, standing, and sitting. If I came to your place and you were watching television, what one of those 3 postures would I see you do? How many of you kneel when you watch TV? How many of you stand? Okay? How many of you sit? Why do you sit? It's a posture of listening. We sit to listen. That's why you're sitting during this homily, so you can listen. Okay? First reading. I could ask a trick question. I'm not going to do that today because I've asked it before. But does the first reading always come from the Old Testament? Not always. Most of the time it does, but the exception is during the Easter season. It comes from the Acts of the Apostles, the New Testament. But by and large, the first reading does come from the Old Testament. The responsorial psalm. Okay? We have Joyce back there, we have Jan. They played it, they sang, we sang it. And the responsorial psalm comes from the book of Psalms, which is found, everyone, in the Old Testament. Okay? And why do we sing, everyone? Because when we sing, we always say this. We pray twice. We say the words, but we also sing the words. So we really give God double praise. Come to the second reading. No trickery here. None. If I ask you, does the second reading always come from the New Testament? The answer is absolutely yes. Now, New Testament, not from the Gospels. From the corpus, then, that is beyond the Gospels, that is where we're going to find the New Testament reading. Paul, John, Peter, Revelation, etc., etc., etc. Okay? You're sitting. Then you do something strange, and I'm going to ask you why. I told you earlier that the greatest posture to listen is sitting. But when it comes to the gospel, you stand. Why? Why? People, we believe that when the gospel is proclaimed, Jesus Christ speaks through the voice of a priest, and Jesus Christ himself speaks the words himself. So what do you think is the better posture if Jesus is talking to you? To sit or to stand? We stand. Okay? And why do we stand, everyone? As a sense of respect. We stand because Jesus is speaking to us. That's respect. It's respect. Remember what I told you last week. Jesus came to your door, rang the doorbell, and you said, "Who is it?" "It's Jesus." "What are you going to do? Are you going to sit on your rears, or are you going to get up and go answer the door?" I have a feeling all of you would say, "You know something, Father? I'm going to get up and go to the door." Why? It's Jesus. Respect. Okay. Sit back down now. You listen to Father. Okay, the homily. It isn't a sermon, by the way. A sermon, basically, everyone, what that does, it's kind of a treatise. I could take a topic, everyone, and I could talk to you about it for 45 minutes. Okay, that's kind of a sermon. But if I did that, you'd probably not be happy with me. So what a homily does, everyone, is this. It takes the words that you've heard and tries to help you understand, how can I take this out to the world? How can I do this? Now, the homily does not have to be on the readings. It doesn't. As a matter of fact, for 5 weeks, we've heard about the bread of life. For 5 weeks, I could have talked to you simply on the topic of the Eucharist. Would I like to do it during Advent? Don't necessarily deal a lot with the readings, but I like to talk about 4 sermons on different themes to get us ready for the Incarnation. Okay? People ask me, "Father, how long does it take you to get a homily together?" I'll tell you the honest answer. When I was first ordained, it took a lot longer. But now, because we've done it so many times, everyone, I would say from start to finish, a person can probably do a homily in about 3 hours. 3 hours. Okay, but remember this. Many times it isn't the only homily we give during the week. Get a funeral in there, another. Wedding, there's another. 3 funerals times 3. Okay? So it just gives you an idea in regards to it. Okay, the creed. Stand for the creed. By the way, I'm going to ask you a question. I am going to ask you one question. What is the longer of the 2 creeds, the Apostles' Creed or the Nicene Creed? The Nicene Creed. The Apostles' Creed, that should be easy. Think apostles. When were the apostles alive? 1st century. Nicene Creed comes to us from the 4th century. It is the longer creed. Some of you ask me, "Father, why can't we use the Apostles' Creed?" If you open up, you gather hymnal, it'll say in there, Apostles' Creed to be used with masses for children. Outside of that, everyone, we use the Nicene Creed. It is a longer creed. And you would expect that from the 1st to the 4th century, articles of faith would have to be discussed and determined. People, I want you to remember this. When you profess that Nicene Creed, I want you to remember the blood, sweat, and tears that went into defining those articles. And yes, people left the church. because of what you and I profess. We take it for granted, but a lot went into what we profess. Okay? And finally, our prayers of the faithful, everyone. That's the bridge into the liturgy of the Eucharist. Of course, hearing what we hear with the Word now, everyone, what do? We offer up our prayers and we ready ourselves for the Eucharist. By the way, they are called general intercessions. They aren't specific intercessions. In other words, I don't go around and say, Kevin and Sheila, what do you want to add today? Scott, Monica, Talitha, what do you want to add? Gary, what do you want to add? Sharon, what do you want to add? Imagine how long Mass would be. We offer general intercessions. The specific intercessions you provide yourselves. And we take all of those prayers, everyone, and we offer them up to God, and we ready ourselves to receive the gift of the Eucharist. Okay? So enough on that today, everyone. Next week, we're going to look at the third and final part. We're going to look at the liturgy of the Eucharist and also the concluding rites. Okay? That's what I want to look at next week. Okay? But we leave that till then. In the meantime, I want us all to think about that. Jesus says, I am the life. How courageous that is. Eat my body, drink my blood. How crazy that is. And then to say, if not, you will not live. Powerful stuff. Think about that. Reflect upon it, everyone, as we continue to celebrate our faith in Jesus Christ.